Thank the gentleman. Chair now recognizes gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Turner.
Secretary Austin, General Brown, and Mr. McCord, thank you for being here. Thank you for your leadership. Secretary Austin, I know you are aware that last week our ambassador to the United Nations, in conjunction with the Japanese, brought forth a resolution to the UN Security Council asking for all nations to prevent a dangerous nuclear arms race in outer space and to calling for a prevention of a nuclear arms race in space. This resolution was blocked, vetoed by Russia, and abstained by China. Secretary Austin, what would be the effect if a nuclear device was detonated today in outer space?
It would have devastating consequences on a lot of our capabilities in space, not only our capabilities, but the capabilities of other countries. And so for that reason, we think it's irresponsible for anybody to even consider deploying or employing a nuclear device in space.
Well, Mr. Secretary, General Michael Traut, the commander of Germany's Military Space Command, agrees with you. He stated the worst-case scenario of an indiscriminate nuclear blast in space, radiating out at a satellite-frying electromagnetic pulse across low Earth orbit would be devastating, as you had said, for everyone. If somebody dares to explode a nuclear weapon in high atmosphere or even space, this would be more or less the end of the usability of that global commons of orbit. Deploying a nuclear weapon in space would also be counter to the United Nations Outer Space Treaty of 1967. In addition, it would have catastrophic effects on civilian use of space and our commercial use of space. Mr. Secretary, why would someone put a satellite in space that has nuclear capabilities to detonate a weapon in space as opposed to just use a missile or an ICBM to detonate a nuclear weapon in space?
Certainly, a device like that would have could have a much more extensive impact and cover more ground, for lack of a better term, with one device than an anti-satellite weapon, which is directed towards a specific target. This thing would take away large swaths of capability, and as you pointed out, not just our capability, but also allies and partners, and so we don't really fully know or understand what the full effects would be. It would depend upon the yield of the weapon, the orbit that it was in, and all those things. But certainly it would have.
Mr. Secretary, wouldn't one of the reasons why they'd put it in space as opposed to shoot an ICBM or missile is because an ICBM or missile could be attributed as a nuclear weapons attack on a country and would have a nuclear weapons response?
That's right. If it was an attack on one of our terrestrial capabilities, sure. But they also have the opportunity or the ability to use a ground launch capability to attack a satellite and take out some capability that's on orbit.
Mr. Secretary, John Plum, the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Space Policy, told reporters on April 5th that Washington was in discussions with Russia about the weapons plans and apparent confirmation that Moscow is at least engaging on the topic. Is Russia developing an anti-satellite weapon with nuclear capabilities?
Certainly, I would not want to get into a discussion of intelligence information in an open hearing, but certainly we can have that discussion.
Right. So, Mr. Secretary, the reason why I ask you the question and the reason why you're stumbling is because the Biden administration refused to declassify this information. So we're not able to have an open public discussion. But one thing I'm concerned about is that, Mr. Secretary, in your entire written testimony, you never mention anti-satellites as a threat. You certainly don't even mention nuclear weapons as a threat, but the administration's moving forward trying to get the UN Security Council to take action. I believe that this is the Cuban Missile Crisis in space, and this administration is sleepwalking itself into an international crisis. And I certainly want to encourage you, to encourage the administration to declassify this and take every actions necessary to avoid this space race that could, as our ambassador to the United Nations says, be a nuclear weapons space race.
Gentleman's time's expired. Chair, now